Here we go. It's Marky Billson. And a reminder, in the next hour, folks from SG1 Sports, they are going to tell us how they got their video game simulation of Tennessee. Well, they don't have Tennessee doing all that well, 5-7 this year. But how did they get it? Who did they see winning the national championship? And also, my question I want to ask, how do you simulate this game? How do you simulate the 2019 season with the 2014 game? Because they haven't made EA Sports this game for college football since 2014 because of Ed O'Bannon. And really, not so much because of Ed O'Bannon, because of the NCAA's pig-headedness. I don't know what else to tell you right there, but, you know. Look, I mean, you want to tell me, look, you get scholarships, blah, blah, blah. I mean, okay, maybe Peyton Manning brings a lot of money into Tennessee, but how much does the backup fullback who is on scholarship? I get it. Okay, sure. Now, maybe that's unfair to Peyton Manning, but he will get his just desserts, the feeling is, in the NFL, right? I mean, he'll be remunerated there. So, you know, we get that. The college football loves to talk about, and they do a whole lot of liners that have, only 1% of their players or whatever it is go on to play in the pros, and so therefore it's still, amateur and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I think that has a lot more weight on, say, a Division III level than it does at a Southeastern Conference level. Then again, the vast majority of people who play for Alabama do not necessarily go to the NFL. I mean, we also get that too. What bothers me is when in Alabama, somebody like Brandon Kennedy wants to transfer to Tennessee so he can play, and Alabama wants to block that. That really bothers me. Or for that matter, it would bother me if Tennessee was trying to block it to go to, I don't know, South Carolina or Vanderbilt or something. No, I want to transfer to Vanderbilt. They have, wonderful, I made straight A's here, and they will accept me, and they've got a wonderful program and whatever it is, and, but you could beat us in football. Maybe he would beat at Vanderbilt, say, Georgia in football, and therefore that would open up the way for you to win the national title or the SEC East title or whatever. Because that's why I say national title. That's what happened when Brandon Stewart transferred to Texas A&M. Now, wasn't it when Texas A&M knocked off Kansas State for Tennessee? 2 years later, K-State beats Tennessee in a Cotton Bowl. Not a given they'd lose in the Fiesta Bowl if it was Kansas State and not Florida State playing Tennessee, but aren't you happy the way it worked out? And didn't Brandon Stewart therefore have an assist in Tennessee's national title in 98? If you don't know, Brandon Stewart was going to be the backup quarterback behind Peyton Manning, and he had been recruited with him and thought he might have been the starter. One time he was getting equal playing time, but that was short-lived, obviously, and so he decided to transfer to Texas A&M and became the starter there, and they won the Big 12 title. And in the Big 12, yes, they had a Big 12 title game. They even had divisions in the Big 12. They even had 12 teams in the Big 12. Can you imagine that? And sure enough, it was an upset. Kansas State, I think Kansas State was ranked number 1 at the time. They were undefeated. And if they weren't number 1, then they were number 2. And if they won that game, they would have played Tennessee for the national title. Instead, they lost it to Texas A&M. And Brandon Stewart was the Aggies quarterback. You don't think he deserves an assist? Come on, get out of here. Tennessee did get some good news, and boy, they needed it with the injuries they've had on the line and all this sort of stuff. But they got some good news when a player came back for them, namely Currat Garland. Currat Garland returned to the practice field. He entered into the transfer portal, 304-pound defensive lineman. Of course, the Vols, what with Emmett Gooden down, need some D-line help, and nobody knows what's going on with Aubrey Solomon. What are you waiting for, NCAA? He was a redshirt freshman. It's a matter of depth. He's now practicing with Tennessee, so it looks like he doesn't want to transfer. Who knows? Jeremy Pruitt says, I don't look at the transfer portal as a bad thing. Says, you're talking about a young man that comes here as a freshman, had several obstacles to go through physically, so he was thinking about possibly transferring. Hey, we supported him all the way through it, and he decided to come back here. So he's here. Again, perhaps that injury to Gooden. So maybe the Vols aren't that bad. Maybe I will get a chance to play. I don't know. Does he know something about Aubrey Solomon we ought to? I don't know. It's possible. But yeah. Regardless. Now, so that's a good thing. I mean, look. Vols need players on the D-line. Okay, it's down to that. Yeah. It's likely, considering one's in the Sun Belt and the other's in the SEC, that when they kick off on August 31st against Georgia State, the Panthers, probably not going to win that. Probably not going to lose that game. Come on, Georgia State's 2-10 last year. Been really struggling. I mean, they kind of leapfrog. They kind of jump-started their ascension to the FBS. Georgia State's only had a program since 2010. However, look for the Tennessee Volunteers' success this year if you want to look at the Georgia State game as, a possible precursor to the rest of the year. And I'm not sure that you really can do that because, what kind of a precursor was the 2017 opener against Georgia Tech? What kind of precursor was the 2018 game against West Virginia? Some will say, yeah, that said they weren't going to have a winning season this year and losing 20-14. Come on. I'll give you that. But that precursor was not a statement that, let's say, they were going to beat Auburn. For that matter, 2016, I mean, if Appalachian State has a kicker, they win that game. Now, maybe, just maybe, Appalachian State, that was a precursor that the Vols might not be that best team in the SEC East that everybody thought they would be, but on the other hand, Tennessee did win 9 games that year. So, you tell me. Anyway, that's the case. I did want to say this, finish out the segment this way. And a couple days ago, UNC Asheville released their non-conference men's basketball schedule, and I was disappointed because ETSU wasn't in it. Now, for the Tennessee Volunteers fans, the Bulldogs will open up in Thompson-Boling Arena, and that'll be on November the 5th. UNCA will not shy away from Southern Conference opposition. They will travel 4 days after that to the Citadel. They will also take on, in Cullowhee on December 7th, Western Carolina. And on December 21st, the Bulldogs will host the Chattanooga Mocs. Additionally, they'll be playing teams from, let's say, they'll travel to Wake Forest as well as Tennessee, so they'll take on all the comers. Charlotte. They'll host a team in the Tennessee system in UT Martin. Former ETSU rival and Stetson will come to Asheville on December 17th. They'll even have their own money games, what with the Brevard Tornadoes coming in on November 16th and on November 21st, St. Andrews coming in. And there's also a trip to Orangeburg, South Carolina for South Carolina State on December 11th. What bothers me, and I've said this, I would like to see UNCA and ETSU go into a long-term home-and-home deal. I think it's the perfect way to start the seasons. And I just wonder, hey, why not? I mean, coach there for UNCA is from Elizabethton, Mike Morrell. For that matter, it has the potential, as much as any season opening game could be, of being something of a rivalry. Look, you open up against Northern Kentucky or ETSU, it's snooze time. You open against UNCA, hey, every other year, I don't mean to sound like Devin Mullins here, but it's a pretty easy road trip to go to if you want to. But the other thing is just consider how different cities Asheville and Johnson City are. So there's very different cultural aspects here between both Johnson City and Asheville that also lead to rivalry. There is some history there Ed DeChillis won his first game. It was a season-opening victory against UNCA, and he did not have much of a team, let me tell you. But he was able to beat the Bulldogs that year. I don't know who to blame. I don't know who's at fault. 2 years ago, UNCA was pretty good. Last year, they were pretty lousy. But it's just something, I don't want the politics to be involved. I want to see the game played. I think it's a natural rivalry. UNCA and ETSU for the reasons I told you. And I think it's a great way to open up the season. And unfortunately, it's not going to happen. And I wonder why. It hasn't happened. They haven't played since Steve Forbes took over. And, I mean, there have been, and say what you will, I mean, yes, I do think that more ETSU fans would rather play Appalachian State. There's more history there. But that doesn't mean that UNCA wouldn't be a good rivalry. Take it from there.
Of Shrek